Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Becky Lewis, who is a social media strategist and marketing expert. And in today's episode, we are going to be diving into sales psychology made simple, unlocking the mind of your buyer. Becky, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for coming onto the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kayleigh.
Let's dive into this topic. Now, we have never had a specialist on the podcast, on the show, to dive into sales psychology. And it is a very exciting topic. It's a topic that absolutely every female entrepreneur or every entrepreneur out there should know about, because this is where we get to make sales more simple. So before we dive into the topic itself, it would be great if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about you and your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey isn't the typical, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So it was probably actually quite the opposite. So I was actually born deaf. I left school with only a GCSE in English and Welsh. And I was constantly told by teachers throughout school that I'd never get very far. So growing up, I did what everyone else does, sort of thing, and tried to find a career. So I became a qualified hairdresser, hated that, and then went into care work for a while. That was, really sort of good, but then circumstances changed and I moved away to be with my husband. Then I went into recruitment, and that was actually my longest job that I ever held down, which is about 9 months, so that's a record for me. And yet I never sort of felt like I belonged anywhere. I was always restless and I was just searching for something, I think, that didn't really exist for me. So at the time, sort of upon lots of self-reflection, I thought the problem was always me. But looking back, the thread of not belonging wasn't about me not being capable at all. It was the fact that I'd sort of been underestimated from the start. And being deaf wired me completely differently. So I couldn't rely on purely just sound. So I spent my whole life decoding people from their faces, their gestures, their tone. And it wasn't a skill for me, it was a survival method. And eventually I realised that that was what would become my edge. So then the turning point for me was when my brother approached me. He's dyslexic, and he asked me to help me grow his business on social media. So obviously writing content was quite hard for him. So I just jumped in. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And suddenly, it sounds really weird, or really generic actually, but it just clicked for me. And it was not just the creating the content, but understanding how people think, what they pay attention to, and what actually makes them feel safe enough to buy. And we managed to actually grow his business pretty quickly. And then that sort of gave me the confidence to build my own. So if it wasn't for my brother, I would not be doing any of this. So obviously I sort of went into social media then and learned as much as I could. But for me, I thought growth would always come from cracking the Instagram algorithm, as everybody else says. But I really realised pretty quickly it wasn't just that. It was about people. It was always about psychology and about speaking to the subconscious and not the surface. And that's how I got into sort of social media. And yeah, it just went from there.
Oh, I love this so much. And what a phenomenal journey you've been on. And, it's incredible what you've been able to do. And I absolutely love that this is now a real passion of yours and you are supporting so many entrepreneurs with making more sales through social media and really leaning into the sales psychology. Because at the end of the day, if you can tap into that and ultimately master it, you are already winning, aren't you, as an entrepreneur? You're allowing yourself to understand the types of buyers and the people that are in your audience so that you can activate them and they will want to learn more about you. And we're going to dive into this in more depth. I know Becky is going to share all of her expertise on this. So for someone new to sales psychology, how would you actually explain what it is and why does it actually matter with business?
So, sales psychology, put really simply, is the sort of scientific sort of investigation into how people make decisions. And what we've actually learned is around 95% of those decisions aren't conscious, they're actually happening in the subconscious part of the mind. So, in terms of that, a lot of people on social media, they like to speak to the logic part of the brain. So, this could be facts, features, benefits, etc. But actually, you are only engaging 5% of the decision-making process. And that's why so much marketing does fall flat, because going back to sales psychology, a lot of people will think it's manipulation, but it's not. It's about communicating in a way that feels like recognition to the person reading it. So when your words land in the subconscious, whoever's reading it, they don't just hear you, they feel you. And when they feel you, they'll choose you. And that is basically sales psychology wrapped up very neatly and nicely.
Oh, amazing. So it's all about feeling and hearing and really connecting with them as such. And I think it's quite, do you know what, first of all, actually, I think it's really interesting the stat you shared there as well in terms of the 5%. And I think it's really important as well, isn't it, to highlight that with social media, it's so easy to pour, as we say, your heart and soul into creating social media. And people might feel that they've spent an hour creating one post and then they potentially get a little bit disheartened when it doesn't land. But it's okay. And I think it's a case of, isn't it, really learning to use sales psychology so that the key aspects of that post are then picked up on by your audience to really support you with standing out.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think, like you said, a lot of people get quite disheartened with social media and they're just like, why is it not working for me? But at the end of the day, you've got to remember there's another human at the end of the screen that's going to be reading that post. So if you're sounding like ChatGPT or AI, you're not connecting on a personal human level. And people, sort of my work as well is I like to make people realize that, there is actually another human on the end of that screen. It's not all AI and all of this. And you've got to remember that we're just humans, and that is all sales psychology is.
100%. Absolutely. So, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make in their content or messaging where they probably end up pushing buyers away instead of actually attracting them?
Yeah, so definitely the leading with logic and not emotion. So it's definitely, people don't buy coaches or courses or whatever you're offering because you've just posted on social media. It doesn't happen like that. They actually buy the relief, identity, and belonging. So emotion is always first and logic is always second. And then coming into that is the generic safe messaging. So I do always say to everybody that I've worked with, if your content could belong to anybody, if I could literally just take your content and post it on my page, it belongs to nobody. And in the brain, we just tend to delete vague messages, and that is through it's called reticular activating system, and that's basically our brain's internal filter system. So it just get rid of it if it thinks it's not relevant. And then again, the sort of third one is that overload with information. So part of this is called the cognitive load theory, which basically means, and I like to call it mental calories. So if your post is just full of words after word, you're paragraph after paragraph, the brain is lazy. People are lazy in that respect. They don't want to hear it. They want to get straight to the point. So overloading with that information, it just creates decision fatigue. And when the brain already feels overloaded, the easiest decision and the default decision is to just make no decision at all. So I think those are probably my three main ones that I do see most people make on social media.
Okay. And if someone then, because obviously they're mistakes that people are seeing and or making, should I say, and you've really explained those and why it's happening as such and how it potentially pushes people away. So say for example then our listeners, there may well be someone listening to this podcast right now that thinks, okay, I really want to learn more about this. What can they start doing if they wanted to start applying sales psychology today? Is there one thing or something simple they could start with to help them with how to speak to their audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, with sales psychology, people probably hear it and go, oh my God, that sounds complicated. It's not. You don't have to be a professor or somebody like a neuroscientist to actually understand sales psychology. But the quickest shift, I would say, and the easiest quick win is just mirroring your audiences in a dialogue. So in sales psychology, it's actually called language mirroring. So what I always say is write down the exact words that your ideal clients are saying to themselves when they're frustrated and simply use those words in your content. So for example, me, I could say, I'll help you sign consistent clients. What I would say instead is you're doing all the things they told you to do, the reels, the carousels, the value posts, and yet you still feel invisible. And that works because it's like a thought that they've already had. And when people feel like you're inside their head, trust builds instantly. And I always say trust is a real currency in sales.
Oh, I love that. What a great example as well. And for anyone listening, absolutely try this because it really does. It does shift not only how your audience see it, but also I think it really makes you feel empowered as well in terms of you giving them this really relatable and opportunity to actually relate and resonate with that particular description as such. Because as we say, and I say this all the time, you want to quite simply get inside your ideal clients' heads to the
Yeah.
point where they are literally thinking, oh my goodness, she is speaking to me right now. And that's what you want to create, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. And I always say, imagine you're a fly on the wall and they're sat at their desk. What are they saying to themselves? What are they experiencing? How do they feel? What emotions are coming up for them? And when you do that and you put that into your content, you'll immediately start activating and resonating with your audience.
Amazing. So, how can our listeners then identify what their audience is really motivated by beyond the surface level wants and needs?
Yeah, so again, most people like to just stop at the surface level desires and wants because they don't want to intrude. And you're right, well, my ideal client could say, I want more clients, I want more money, I want more freedom. But behavioral economics shows us that humans are more influenced by loss aversion. We will always work harder to avoid loss than to gain something new. So instead of just asking, oh God, what's my ideal client want? Ask the things. What are they scared of losing? Whether that's status, credibility, time, belonging, whatever. And what do they want to prove? Whether that's, resilience, authority in their industry, etc. And then finally, who do they believe they are now versus who they want to become? And that is where we call in sales psychology cognitive dissonance. And people buy to resolve that gap. So, for example, if somebody said to me, oh, I just want more clients, more money, what I would say is that they are scared that people will think their business isn't legit unless they're fully booked. And I would put that into my content because I'm now bringing up that identity pain. And when you speak to that, you get their attention because you've named what they've never admitted out loud. And that changes the game.
Amazing. I'm sure people listening to this podcast right now are probably scribbling down some notes and going, oh, what was that again? And Don't worry, Becky has got the most incredible sales psychology course that we're going to share at the end anyway. So if you are listening to some of this and thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information, I want to capture it, just hold on to that thought until the end because we will be sharing with you exactly how you can learn a lot more about sales psychology and how you can implement this into your content. So amazing, Becky. I absolutely love this. And I think this is going to help so many people. I want to talk about storytelling because I know that storytelling is so powerful in content and in anything actually. But what role does storytelling play in sales psychology? And actually, how can someone start using their own story to sell more effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it may seem really simple, but storytelling is actually probably one of the most powerful tools in sales psychology. And the reason for that is because it bypasses the logic part of the brain and it hits straight into the emotional brain. So neuroscientists call this neural coupling. So
Mhm.
when we hear a story, our brain responds as if we're actually experiencing it ourselves. So one thing I would say is that, when you tell people, oh, do use this storytelling, I don't mean dramatic rags to riches stories. Your story is proof of possibility. It's a mirror. And, a lot of people on social media will, say things like, I don't know, my offer has 6 modules. Instead of just saying that, you tell the story of the night you almost quit, all the messy moments that made you create this offer in the first place. And that allows the buyer to see themselves in your own journey and imagine their own transformation. Because if you've done it, they can do it too. And storytelling is the most relatable way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So relatable. And I think it is so powerful. I love the fact as well that you said it doesn't have to be a really dramatic rags to riches story. And that was, that was something I was always really worried about when I first started my business, because a lot of people were saying, use your story, tell your story, use that more and more. But I used to think, well, my story's not that interesting, to be honest with you. I haven't overcome any massive, life-changing things. I am literally one of those people that went into come from a middle class family, went into a very standard career, built a business on the side. And then I remember someone saying to me, but it doesn't have to be like what you just said, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but it doesn't have to be quite simply this incredible life-changing concept. Think
Yeah.
of your story broken down into lots of mini stories. And that's where you can really unpick things, can't you? And they said, give me an example of, when you had a really big challenge and you overcame that challenge. And then
Yeah.
your brain starts thinking, you think, oh, actually, yeah, I've got millions of different things I could say. So it's almost as if you don't have to look at your story, do you, as an entirety. And it doesn't have to be something that's going to end up, in the press one day because it's a shocking story. It's your personal story. So I really like what you've said there, because I think that will help a lot of our listeners understand that every single story is unique and it's got so much within it that I'm sure will help and support a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And like with storytelling, you don't have to be on Instagram recording yourself saying your story over and over again. I'll be recording, a piece of content and I'll drop a line in there that I'm deaf. That's my story. So I'll just drop it in now and again. It's not constant. Oh God, I'm gonna have to record all about my story today and tomorrow. And it's not like that. It's just the little drip feeding. And again, that is what creates the safety in the buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of psychology, are there any top psychological triggers that you think our listeners should know or understand when they're creating content that they want to be able to convert?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably the question that I was most excited for. So the three that I would pick is loss aversion. So I mentioned this earlier. So people will work a lot harder to avoid losing something than to gain something new. You always need to show your potential buyer what's at stake, what are they going to lose if they don't invest in you right now, what are they missing out. So that is probably the top massive one that I would recommend for everybody to start using straight away. And another one that's often overlooked is social proof. And as humans, we're naturally wired to follow the crowd. So things like testimonials, case studies, your stories, storytelling, etc., they create safety within the buyer. And when your buyer feels safe, they can trust you. So social proof is massive on that. And then the third one that probably people don't realize about is the identity alignment. So we buy naturally what matches who we want to become, not just what we need today. And your content should always reflect that future self because that is powerful.
Absolutely. Oh, incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing those because I think, again, it's something to really consider. And for those listening, I know there's a lot of information here that Becky is very excited about, but also very knowledgeable about, and absolutely has something incredible to share with all of you in regards to sales psychology to support you. So for those that are listening to this podcast that potentially thinking, gosh, wow, sales psychology, this is potentially for more advanced people or advanced marketers. For beginners with
Yeah.
sales psychology, how can they put this into practice without overcomplicating it or feeling a bit overwhelmed as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you may not believe me when I say this. It doesn't need to be complicated. It really doesn't. Forget the funnels and all for a second. And like I said, start with language. Everybody has a voice and everybody uses the same language, more or less. Okay. So language is always the first place that I suggest you start. So when you're creating content, ask yourself, and I do this still because it can sort of blur the lines sometimes. And I've actually got it on sticky notes, so it's there as soon as I'm writing content. Does this sound how my ideal client talks to themselves, or does it sound like a marketer? Now, that one question strips away all the nonsense. And when you're using the language that your ideal client uses, their brain again processes it as familiar, and familiarity equals safety. And that safety right there is what allows us to say yes, because the logical brain, so you basically pulled them in with the emotional brain, and now the logical brain is just given reasons to say yes.
Okay. So again, it's all linking to emotions, obviously what you said, logic, and then obviously that safety being really important because they want to feel safe and they want to make sure that they are making the right decision for them.
Absolutely, 100%. Because I mean, I know for myself, I'm very much an impulse buyer. It literally doesn't take me 2 seconds to make a decision. Now, again, not going to dive into all the different buyer types because there's quite a few, but it's just the language. Everybody understands emotion, and no matter who you're talking to, it will relate to somebody. So I think that's why the language is so powerful because it's the easiest thing to do because everybody on social media can relate to that in some way.
Amazing. And is there a powerful kind of mindset shift that you'd love our listeners to take away today that will help them feel a little bit more confident when it comes to selling with psychology?
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to hate selling. Oh my God. Like when it came up, I was like, no, I can't do it. But once I sort of started to study sales psychology and sort of really go into the ethics behind selling as well, is it's not about convincing them. It's about connecting with them on a personal level. And you're not here to push people. You're just here to reflect back to them, to themselves, so they fully understand enough to say yes to you. And it's not manipulation, it's permission. And when sales feels like permission, it really does become a lot less scary. And yeah, I think that mindset shift as well is so important because if you don't sell, you're scared of selling, you'll never make any sales.
Amazing. And what about a final piece of advice for our listeners today?
The one thing that I always bang on about actually on Instagram is don't chase more content, chase deeper content because consistency, you can post every single day. on its own, it doesn't convert. I've tried that. And I really, really, really tried that one, but no, it doesn't work. Resonance does. So if your content can make somebody feel something, seen, relief, whatever, it will eventually make them buy because people forget posts. I mean, couldn't even tell you what the last post I've seen because I've just ignored it. But they don't forget how you made them feel. And that is a game changer.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice, actually. I've definitely been there as well, where you try to post consistently and post every single day and even twice a day. I went through a phase, I remember
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
of posting twice a day because of the reach and the algorithm, and you were told to do so and all these things, back in the day anyway. But it doesn't resonate. And also it didn't really give people enough time to really consume and even take in the information I was telling them, to be honest with you. It's almost as if, oh, there's another post, oh, there's another post, oh, and it doesn't, I don't think it has the same impact, which I think you're really right. Go deeper into this and make sure, I would definitely say, and I know you will echo this as well, create a couple, 3 posts a week that are deeply embodying, first of all, leadership, which is obviously what I'm all about, and then obviously building in the sales psychology. That is going to win a million times over, isn't it? Than having to post once or twice a day. That's just basically for volume. It doesn't work.
No, exactly, 100%. And I completely agree with that. I'd rather post one post that might get 100 views. I don't care about views, by the way.
Yeah.
But if it's that deep and I can make one sale out of that, then I'm the winner compared to somebody that's going viral that gets thousands of views and followers. Congratulations, but they'll still come to people like me because they want more sales.
Absolutely. And that's true as well, isn't it? I know we're going off a little bit more on the actual engagement side of things, but it is true because I think with sales psychology, it helps you quite simply to sell and to activate your audience. It isn't necessarily going to get you hundreds of thousands of views, but the reality of this is if it's a powerful post, people will take actions and they will be in your DMs asking you for the details. They're not necessarily going to be liking and commenting on the post because they're more interested in feeling activated and taking action there and then rather than, oh, I'm just going to like this post. So I think it speaks volumes, doesn't it, with the fact that it's not about the vanity metrics. It's not about, how many likes and how many people comment. It is all about you activating your audience through biopsychology.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And definitely people need to start realizing that a lot quicker because you've been there, I've been there, got the t-shirt and it doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%. So this has been such a great topic, and I know we could dive into this for hours in so much more depth, Becky, but you have an incredible, very new course as well, which is going to change so many people's, I say lives, but it will eventually, absolutely, but it will change so many ways that people can sell in socials or on socials and through their content, through their emails, all sorts. Can you tell us a little bit about your course?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called the Bio Brain Bootcamp. And it's I'll have to say this properly because it is a tongue tie. My 3 free sales psychology course. So there's 3 lessons in there. We cover what sales psychology actually is, and we sort of tap into some theories behind sales psychology. We have a look at the 3 different buyer types and how you actually speak to them in your content. And then finally, the 3rd lesson looks into content that converts and really activating with sales psychology. So yeah, that's out now. You can sort of head to link in my bio and instant access right now.
Amazing. And the link is in the bio, absolutely. So go and grab instant access to that. It is completely free. And you will learn so much about sales psychology from the incredible Becky, who absolutely is a sales psychology expert. Becky, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so mainly on Instagram. So it's beckymichelle.co. I'm always welcoming new people into my community. So if you have a single question or anything like that, I'm more than happy to answer. So yeah, I'm more than happy to connect with anyone over on there.
Amazing. Go and give her a follow. Go and grab access to her free course. All of the links are in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast episode.
You're more than welcome. Thanks, Kayleigh.
Thanks to everyone that's tuned in to today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and follow the podcast. And I'll see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow, and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.